Ground-penetrating radar just revealed something under the Sahara that shouldn't exist. A network of ancient rivers, larger than the Nile, running through what is now the world's largest desert. Cities built along these rivers 10,000 years ago that housed more people than anywhere else on Earth at the time. And evidence that the entire Sahara was a tropical paradise until something catastrophic happened 5,000 years ago that turned it into sand overnight. This discovery rewrites everything we thought we knew about human civilization, climate change, and why advanced societies collapse. Here's what's actually buried under the sand and why it changes the timeline of human history. In 2023, researchers using synthetic aperture radar from satellites detected something impossible. Under the sand of the Sahara lies a massive network of dried riverbeds called paleochannels. These aren't small streams. They're rivers wider than the Mississippi, covering an area the size of Western Europe. The lead paleochannel, called the Tamanrasset River System, is 3,200 kilometers long. For context, the Nile is 6,650 kilometers. But here's what makes this insane. The Tamanrasset wasn't one river. It was the main artery of a network with hundreds of tributaries. Something caused the fastest desertification event in Earth's geological record, and we're only now discovering what was lost. The implications are staggering. If you have river networks this size, you have ecosystems supporting massive populations. You have agriculture feeding millions. You have civilizations that history completely forgot because they're buried under 200 feet of sand. Here's where it gets disturbing. The radar that found the rivers also detected geometric structures along the ancient riverbanks. We're not talking about scattered ruins. We're talking about planned cities with organized street grids, central monuments, and residential districts covering dozens of square kilometers. The site, called Gobero in Niger, dates to 8,000 BCE. That's 10,000 years ago. The pyramids of Giza were built in 2,500 BCE. These Saharan cities are 5,500 years older than the pyramids. They're twice as old as Stonehenge. They predate every known ancient wonder by thousands of years. But here's what makes archaeologists lose their minds. These sites show advanced construction techniques. Stone blocks weighing multiple tons fitted together without mortar. Sophisticated water management systems with channels and reservoirs. Astronomical alignments in the monument placements. This wasn't primitive hunter-gatherer stuff. This was organized civilization with engineering knowledge that supposedly didn't exist yet. The site at Nabda Playa in southern Egypt has a stone circle that's 7,000 years old. Analysis shows it's aligned to track the summer solstice and major star systems. The people who built this had advanced astronomical knowledge 2,000 years before Egypt's first dynasty. They were charting the heavens while the rest of the world was supposedly living in caves. In 2020, excavations near the dried Tamanrasset riverbed uncovered something that broke the academic timeline. Pottery fragments with intricate geometric designs dated to 9,500 years ago. Agricultural tools showing evidence of organized farming from 10,000 years ago. And most disturbing, written symbols that predate Sumerian cuneiform by 4,000 years. Let me be clear about what this means. The accepted history says writing was invented in Sumer around 3,400 BCE. That's when civilization supposedly began. Everything before that was prehistory without written records. These Saharan symbols are dated to 7,500 BCE, which multiple laboratories have confirmed it's not, or there was an advanced literate civilization in Africa 4,000 years before Sumer that history completely missed. But here's why the academic establishment is fighting this. If there was advanced civilization in the Sahara 10,000 years ago, it means the entire narrative of human development is wrong. It means civilization didn't start in Mesopotamia and Egypt and spread outward. It means there was something before that we lost. And it means that climate change can destroy advanced civilizations so completely that they disappear from historical memory. The burial sites found at Gobero contained over 200 skeletons. These weren't random burials. They showed complex funeral rites with grave goods, jewelry, and ceremonial positioning. The people burying their dead with this level of care had culture, religion, and social structures. They had civilization. Then they vanished. Here's what happened and why it's terrifying. Around 5,500 years ago, Earth's orbital precession shifted monsoon patterns in Africa. The Sahara had been green for 10,000 years, receiving regular rainfall from West African monsoons. The orbital shift moved the monsoons south. The rain stopped. The desertification happened so fast that it appears instantaneous in the geological record. Lakes that covered thousands of square kilometers evaporated. Vegetation died. The cities along the rivers were abandoned, and within a few generations, the entire population either died or migrated, and the civilization was buried under advancing sand. But here's what climate data reveals that should terrify modern civilization. This wasn't gradual change that societies could adapt to. This was rapid climate shift that happened faster than infrastructure could be relocated or agriculture could be adjusted. The people watching it happen saw their world end in their lifetimes. Core samples from ancient lake beds show that within 200 years, the region went from receiving 500 mm of annual rainfall to less than 20 mm. That's the difference between tropical savanna and extreme desert. Imagine if California went from current climate to Sahara conditions in 200 years. That's what happened. Entire civilizations had maybe 4 or 5 generations to watch everything they built become uninhabitable. When the Sahara dried up, the population didn't just die, they migrated. And this is where the discovery connects to everything we know about ancient Egypt and the sudden appearance of advanced civilization in the Nile Valley. Egypt's first dynasty appears around 3100 BCE with fully developed writing, architecture, and governance. Egyptologists have always struggled to explain where this complexity came from. There's no gradual development in Egypt. Advanced civilization just appears. But here's what the Saharan evidence suggests. It didn't appear. It migrated. The timeline matches perfectly. The Sahara becomes uninhabitable around 3500 BCE. Advanced civilization appears in Egypt's Nile Valley around 3100 BCE. They moved east to the only major water source left, the Nile. This explains the sudden sophistication of Egyptian civilization. They weren't starting from scratch. They were refugees from a more advanced civilization bringing their knowledge to a new location. The astronomical knowledge in the pyramids, the water management systems, the organized governance structures. These weren't invented in Egypt. They were imported from the Sahara. Genetic studies support this. Analysis of ancient Egyptian DNA shows a significant influx of population from the west around 3500 BCE. These weren't Egyptians mixing with outsiders. These were outsiders becoming the Egyptians. The civilization we call Egyptian might actually be Saharan civilization relocated after climate catastrophe. The 2023 surveys aren't done. Every month brings new discoveries of structures buried under the sand. In October 2024, radar detected what appears to be a pyramid-like structure near the ancient city of Garama in Libya. It's completely buried. No one knew it existed until satellites detected geometric anomalies under 150 feet of sand. The structure is massive. Initial analysis suggests it's 230 feet tall, with a base covering 15 acres. That's 70% the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it's in the middle of the Sahara, where no significant civilization was supposed to exist. The structure is aligned to true north with precision that matches the Giza pyramids. Someone built this with advanced surveying knowledge, and then it was buried and forgotten. But here's what really disturbs archaeologists. The radar shows this isn't an isolated structure. There are 6 more geometric anomalies within 50 kilometers showing similar characteristics. If these are all man-made monuments, we're looking at a complex of structures comparable to Giza, built thousands of years earlier in a location that wasn't supposed to support that level of civilization. The Libyan government has approved excavations starting in 2025. If the structures are what radar suggests, it will force complete rewriting of Bronze Age history. It will prove that advanced architecture existed in Africa long before Egypt, and that climate change buried evidence of civilization so thoroughly that we didn't know to look for it. Artifacts recovered from the Saharan sites include things that make no sense for the supposed time period. In 2022, excavations near the dried Lake Megachad uncovered copper tools dated to 8000 BCE. The problem is that the Copper Age supposedly began around 5000 BCE in the Near East. These African copper tools are 3000 years too early. But here's what's more disturbing. Analysis of the copper shows it's not pure copper. It's a bronze alloy containing tin. Bronze Age doesn't start until 3300 BCE. These tools are dated to 8000 BCE. That's 4,700 years before bronze was supposedly invented. Either the dating is catastrophically wrong, or there was metallurgical knowledge in Africa 5,000 years before the Bronze Age began. The tools show evidence of sophisticated metalworking. They're not crude hammered copper. They're cast in molds with complex shapes and working edges. Someone had furnace technology hot enough to melt and cast metal alloys. That requires kilns, fuel management, and metallurgical knowledge that supposedly didn't exist. And it gets stranger. Some pottery fragments show evidence of glazing techniques that weren't developed in the Mediterranean until Roman times 8,000 years later. The chemical composition of the glaze requires temperatures above 1000 degrees Celsius and specific mineral combinations. This isn't accidental. This is controlled ceramic technology millennia before it should exist. The Sahara wasn't always desert. That's known, but what we didn't know was how fast it changed and what was lost. The discovery of advanced civilization that was completely erased by rapid desertification has direct implications for modern climate change. Here's the nightmare scenario the Sahara proves is possible. Advanced civilizations with cities, agriculture, and millions of people can be destroyed by climate change so rapidly and completely that they vanish from historical memory. It doesn't take millions of years. It takes 300 years. That's 12 generations. People who are born in prosperity die in catastrophe, and their grandchildren's grandchildren live in ruins, trying to survive in a dead landscape. But here's what makes this relevant now. Climate change isn't a distant threat. It's rapid change that happens faster than societies can adapt. The Sahara went from paradise to desert in the same time frame that separates us from the American Revolution. That's recent. That's fast. That's terrifying. Current climate models suggest the American Southwest could experience similar desertification within 200 years if trends continue. California, Arizona, Nevada facing the same timeline the Sahara experienced. Cities abandoned, populations forced to migrate, infrastructure buried under advancing desert. The Sahara isn't ancient history. It's a preview. Ground-penetrating radar coverage of the Sahara is maybe 15% complete. The majority of the desert hasn't been surveyed with modern technology. What we've found so far suggests that under the sand lies an entire lost chapter of human civilization that's bigger than what we've uncovered in Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. There are potentially dozens of buried cities waiting to be found. The river network maps show urban clusters every 100 neta, 200 kilometers along the major waterways. If even half of those clusters contain significant archaeological sites, we're talking about hundreds of excavation sites that could rewrite human history. The technology exists now to map everything without digging. Ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, LiDAR, we can see through the sand. We can identify structures, map city layouts, and determine site significance before excavating. The next 10 years will reveal more about pre-Egyptian African civilization than the last 200 years of traditional archaeology. But here's what slows everything down. Many of these sites are in politically unstable regions: Libya, Mali, Niger, Chad. These countries are facing internal conflicts, limited infrastructure, and minimal resources for archaeological work. The sites are there. The technology exists to study them. But geopolitics prevents the work from happening at the speed it should. If the evidence holds, and there's no reason to think it won't, we have to accept some uncomfortable truths. First, advanced civilization is older than we thought. Second, climate change has destroyed advanced civilizations before. Third, what we call the birth of civilization in Egypt and Mesopotamia might actually be the refugee crisis that followed the Sahara's death. This isn't fringe archaeology. These are peer-reviewed findings published in journals like Nature, Science, and Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The institutions discovering this are MIT, Cambridge, the Max Planck Institute, and National Geological Surveys. This is mainstream science revealing that our timeline of human civilization is fundamentally wrong. The Sahara wasn't empty. It was full of cities, full of people, full of civilization that had writing, metallurgy, astronomy, and architecture. Then climate change killed it so thoroughly that for 5,000 years we didn't know it existed. The sand buried everything. The rivers disappeared. And the survivors migrated to Egypt carrying their knowledge to found what we think of as the first civilization. But it wasn't first, it was second. The first civilization is under the Sahara, and we're only now learning it existed. That changes everything about how we understand human development, climate catastrophe, and the fragility of even advanced societies. What's under the Sahara isn't just ruins. It's a warning. Civilizations fall. Knowledge is lost. Climate changes rapidly. And 5,000 years from now, someone might be using ground-penetrating radar to find what we built, buried under sand or water or ice, wondering why we didn't learn from the people who came before.